Hey, everybody, this is Chris Mahan. We are back with another episode of Shadows on the Wall, the Psychology of School Shooters. This is episode 4. And if you've been following along, you know that we've been looking at behaviors and trigger warnings, different things. We had a great episode last week with Nona Giddens, the therapist from Atlanta. Today, I have a really, really special guest, and she and I have been doing some work together for about a year now on her podcast. I have
Yes.
Anne Alvarez, and
Yes.
she is the awesome host of Masterful Parenting. It's a wonderful podcast. She also is a school counselor. So,
Mhm.
welcome, Anne. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Thank you for being
Mhm.
here. So, before we get started, why don't you kind of let people know what you do and how you work with teens and families?
Yeah, so I'm a parent coach, a school counselor, and the mother of two, ages 24 and 14. So I support students in the high school setting, grades 8 to 12, and I help them with their planning for courses, their post-secondary aspirations, but I also help with mental health concerns.
Okay.
So, anxiety, depression, maybe there's conflict in the family, in the home that they need to talk about, or they might have lost a loved one and they need help and support with grieving. So that's my role as a school counselor, and
That's
I
a lot
support
of
parents also. Yeah,
that's a lot of
with their
things.
team. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's a big job.
So, as we've been talking, we had a little production meeting yesterday, which we always do before a show. And there were some things that you and I had discussed. And one of the things I really like about your work is you get really into the trauma, the old baggage of trauma, whether it's with kids or parents. What do you think maybe some of the contributing factors are for young people today with their own trauma, and how would that translate into maybe their parents carrying some baggage? Maybe there's like a cycle of dare I say dysfunction. I was told last week not to use that word. It's supposed to be challenges, but
Mhm.
we mentioned yesterday you said a healthy, unhealthy behavior. So
Yeah.
how does childhood trauma play a factor in both the parents' idea of things and how that affects their teen?
Yeah, if you like, my specialty is parents with childhood pain. And I use the word pain because it might not be abuse, but it'll be something, it'll be a hurt that you carry from your childhood that you have not healed, or haven't had support healing it. And so then it ends up showing up in your parenting.
Mm,
So like some signs would be you're fearful, you're overprotective of your child, you never feel peaceful, you have trouble enjoying your children, you're controlling them, you're always telling them what to do, you get angry and yell easily, you can't forgive your child if they do something wrong,
mm,
you're embarrassed by their behavior, you're afraid of their intense emotions,
yeah.
and maybe you feel hopeless as a parent. Maybe you felt unloved as a child, and so you want love from your child. And if your child isn't giving you love, then you don't feel validated. And maybe you don't feel like your children appreciate you, right? When you personalize your child's behavior, that's an indication that you're carrying childhood pain.
Wow. That's a lot. And
So a lot of us carry this stuff.
that is a lot. I think there's probably a level of that in everybody because no one has a perfect childhood.
Hmm.
And as we spoke about yesterday, you are in Canada, which is a little bit different than here in the States.
Yeah.
But we also have had a lot of similarities. And one of those was for the teens that are suffering from what we would call abnormal behavior or isolation or just different things that kind of set them apart from their peer group. You were talking about anxiety. So
Yes.
how does a parent's trauma translate into the anxiety or trauma of their teen?
Well, when a parent is carrying childhood pain, then they're going to be very fearful. And our kids feel our emotions. So if you are a fearful parent, your child's going to pick up on that
Hmm.
and also be fearful. Like most of the cases I work with, the kids that have anxiety, the parents are anxious. So it's coming from home when our kids are having anxiety. We have to be monitoring our own anxiety. And where is it coming from? How come I feel this anxiety with my child? And like my child can't take the bus. Even though he's 14, right?
Hmm.
I'm worried about that. So those kinds of things affect our kids. And then our kids carry the anxiety and they don't know how to process it and what to do.
I see that a lot here in the States. So one of the things that people talk about is, well, that's a United States thing, or that's maybe just in Europe. But it sounds to me, especially with what you're saying, these lack of
Lack of
emotions
emotion.
or over emotional parents, that's kind of across the board. I feel like
Yes.
that's everywhere. I see
Hmm.
that here. I see even adults that I work with that are afraid to even do a job interview, or they're afraid
Yeah.
to venture out. So yes, that fear of their behavior does translate into the fear of their children.
Mhm. Yeah.
When it comes to where we're talking about the crisis of school shooters. I know in Canada, you said yesterday you guys don't have a lot of guns, so it's kind of not really a thing. But self-harm does happen up there,
Yes.
and maybe not the same level as does here. But when you see someone who is potentially harming themselves, how do you approach that with the student, and how do you approach that with the parent?
Okay. So I want people to know that self-harm isn't necessarily uh, a sign of suicide. Okay. Like, let's just make that clear.
Okay.
Right. Kids self-harm because something is going on with them that they feel like they have no control. It is a coping mechanism. Like an adult might have a drink because it was a hard day, right? Well, with kids, they cut themselves because something happened. Maybe they were bullied or they're not particularly feeling good about themselves. And that relieves some of it. And sometimes it's just self-hatred, like I hate myself, right?
Mm.
So I'm going to harm myself. And so when I'm working with those teens, I actually try to get into their heads. I ask them questions. I say, when did it start? Like, when did you start hurting yourself? Why do you think you hurt yourself? What's going on? Did something happen at the time when you started hurting yourself? And a lot of times there is an incident that happened. Uh, our kids have an internal dialogue when something happens. That's why I'm a firm believer in no punishing. We don't punish kids. Because what I've learned through my 16 years of school counseling is that when we punish our kids, they don't blame their parents, they blame themselves.
Mm.
They have a message in their mind that I'm bad. Something's wrong with me. Why would my parents punish me if I wasn't bad? Right? And so they carry this. This is another like cycle of pain. They carry this into their adult life, this feeling that they weren't good enough or they didn't do enough or there's something wrong with them. Because why would parents hurt you, abuse you, or reprimand you or yell at you or punish you if there wasn't something wrong with you? Right? That's how kids think. Okay. And it's just because of the dialogue that I've had. That's why I know that. So a child is processing a thought. So we need to know, what is the thought? Like, what are you thinking about when you're cutting yourself? Oh, I hate myself. I don't like myself. A lot of times it's that kind of dialogue. Okay, when did that happen? When did you start not liking yourself? Was there a particular incident that happened? And a lot of times there is. There is a point in time when it happened. It could be something traumatic happened, like their parents split up.
Hmm.
It could be, like I said, a bullying incident, or they got taken away from their grandparents who raised them, and now they're living here without that support. So something happened, and an internal dialogue was going on. Like, I can't handle this. This is not good. I don't like this. I don't like myself. And that's when they start to self harm, right? So, um, when I'm working with kids in their self-harm, I do ask them about suicide because I just want to make sure that they're not thinking about that. So I'll say, have you thought about ending your life? Is it that bad that you have thought about ending your life? If you were going to end your life, do you have a plan for that? This is kind of our assessment at risk factor.
Okay.
What where are they in the risk level? Because if the higher they're at the risk level, the more we have to amp up our actions, like calling the like sometimes we will call the hospital. We will ask a police officer to take them to the hospital. We will call their parents and say, you need to bring them to the hospital right now because they're having these thoughts and they've actually acted on it.
Mm.
So that's why we ask those questions to see where are they at that. A lot of times we get kids before they're at that point, but sometimes we don't. And then we have to make sure that we are taking action so they don't take their lives.
We have here in Florida, I spoke about this last week. We have what's called the Baker Act. And same thing. If we think that someone is going to harm themselves or others, we can call the sheriff's department. They will send out deputies and usually EMTs. They will do an assessment right on the spot. And if that person is having an episode or they think they're going to do something, they do a 72-hour hospital psych hold evaluation. And from there, then they can, hopefully get help beyond that point. Let me ask you though, in my dealing with parents in the last almost 11 years of doing this,
Mhm.
when it comes to something, you said a second ago that parents, through their own trauma, they sometimes are embarrassed or they don't like what's going on. How then do you approach a parent who is just not wanting to listen and see the warning signs that their teen is really showing? You've given them a professional assessment. How do we then get with those parents that just do not want to hear us? How do you approach that?
Okay, so I'm a big believer in connecting, and not telling, right? So I will connect with a parent by saying, you know that I'm a mom. I'm a mom of two. So I understand the challenges, right, of parenting, especially when our kids are going through a really rough time in their lives. But here's the thing. How do you think your child will get better if we don't take action? And I can help you with the action, like what we need to do, what you need to do at home. And a lot of parents will be like, yeah, I want things to get better. Like parents love their children. They carry around baggage. So they don't know how to fully help their kids. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping parents because I carried baggage too. And then I learned that's actually not healthy, you
We
know?
all do. We all have. It's
You
not
know,
just you.
like I made a lot of mistakes with my first one. Thank goodness he's very forgiving.
Yeah, I tell people in my book that I was once a manager style parent, and that's the parent like you
Yeah.
described earlier that lets their emotions get the best of them. They are overly concerned about how their child behaves, how it looks on them.
Yes.
As a quick story, when my oldest was in third grade, we had a was called the FCAT, and it was a basically a placement test to see if they could move
Yeah.
on to the fourth grade. In the third grade rather, the first 2 weeks they do a pretest. Well, he failed it,
Oh,
so they said he's going to fail the fourth grade, and he was only 2 weeks into the third grade.
wow.
So instead of me talking to him and trying to figure out where he was academically or what was going on, I instantly reverted back to my own childhood at 8, 9 years old and how hard school was for me. And I literally was like the worst dad at that moment because I was like, "Do you want to fail? What's wrong with you? And don't you understand?" But
Right.
it was really my own childhood pain of knowing how hurtful that was to be a bad student and to
Yeah.
not feel like you're going to do well in school.
Hmm.
And the more I think about that story and how I wasn't doing this type of work back then, so don't yell at me. I just because I didn't know. It was all emotional reaction to
Yeah.
my own insecurities as a person, a student, a dad. So I totally understand what you're saying, and I get it 100% because we we don't we don't get that playbook. And we mentioned that last week. Maybe that's the thing we could do when kids go home from the hospital when they're just born. Give parents some kind of playbook, like, "Hey, here's some things you're going to deal with." But again, I think I don't know how Canada is, but here in the States, for men especially, accepting your weaknesses or your emotions, we are treated like it's a weakness.
Right.
So guys are very, this is how it is. I'm not going to talk about it. We're just going to suck it up. We're not going to do anything. And you and I've talked about this on previous podcasts about the weak father.
Hmm.
How do we break that stigma for men, for dads specifically? Because I think young boys look up to their father, and if the father is missing, both emotionally or from the home in whatever capacity he's missing, how does that affect a young teenage boy? And I say teenage boys because traditionally school shooters here in the States are males, white, anywhere from 12 to 16, 17 years old, very formidable teenage years. How then as dads can we change? I know your mom, but how could dads change that stigma to allow themselves to be emotional and also to teach that emotion to their sons so they're not
Right.
holding it all in and creating that decades of trauma and pain.
Right. I think we all have a role in changing generations. I'm a mom of two boys, so I'm very aware of my role. So what I say to parents is that you all emotions are good. All of them are. If you're angry, if you're sad, it's part of being human.
Correct.
It is feeling things. And we have to stop giving the message that keep your feelings inside or don't show your emotions. Don't cry in public. Don't get angry in public. We have to stop that messaging because it's damaging. Because what happens is any emotions that are repressed will turn into depression, right? It
Mm,
turns into uh, it turns inward into a not self-loathing, poor self-esteem, right? Because we weren't allowed to express how we truly felt.
right.
And so we need to tell men. I feel like the younger generation of men, no offense, Chris, but I feel like the younger
Okay.
generation of men are more emotionally intelligent. They're able to express their emotions better, and I think it's because our school system is also. I know in Canada, our school system does do units on that, like just how important it is to express emotion, and that all emotions are good. So with my boys, I encourage them to express their emotions, even
I
if they're
do
angry.
I do too.
Yeah.
Once I got into this type of work in about 2011, 2012,
Mhm.
I began to understand that emotions are there to tell us something. And I
Yes.
like what you just said a second ago about repression leads to depression. I've never heard
Yes.
that before, but that's really important to understand.
Mhm.
And when we're
Yeah.
depressed, we're not growing. I think
Right.
one of the things too, when you're holding everything in, you're not allowing yourself to grow emotionally, spiritually, um, communicationally, relationship. And
Yes.
when we're not growing, or when something is not growing, it's dying. And
Yes.
it's that internal, what's my purpose? I hear that a lot of times with young guys, teenagers, early 20s. I'll ask them, what's your goal, what's your dream, or what's your, hopes and aspirations. And so many times they'll tell me, I don't have any.
Yeah.
No one's ever asked me that. I say this all the time. People will be like, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. And I'm thinking, how in the heck do you not have the support system to encourage those ideas and thoughts when you're younger? I've said this a million times. When I decided to get into acting at 16, I moved from Michigan to Georgia. I was afraid to tell my dad and stepmom that I wanted to do this. And I was like, what are they going to think? Are they going to think I'm weird? Is my dad going to think it's like the craziest idea?
Yeah.
But honestly, they both supported it. And within a month, I was in a school. Within a couple weeks of that, I was doing my first photo shoot. This was in June, July. I did my first movie in November. And from there, it went on to a whole career of different
Right.
things.
Yeah.
Had I not had that support system at 16, 17, 18, 19, I don't know what I would have done because I was
Right.
trying to find myself because I felt like this is a direction I wanted to go in. But if I had not had that support system to encourage it and allow it, and in some cases financially support it when I was first starting,
Hmm.
I probably would have had some resentment there. And I
Right.
probably would have thought, well, if I couldn't do that, I can't do this. And why should, and so now you've got this kid that's, you know, like you said a second ago, they got this internal dialogue going on.
Yeah.
So for me, it was very life changing to have that support system. And when I talk to young people today, especially guys,
Yeah.
ask them what they want to do, they'll say, "Well, it sounds really stupid, but I want to have a business." Well, why is that stupid? Like, tell me about it.
Mm.
What do you want to do? Let's look at some let's look at some things you can do to maybe move forward. Or they'll
Right.
say, I had a kid in my class about a month and a half ago, and he's Indian, and he said, "I'm in IT because my dad's not a doctor." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "If my dad was in medicine, I'd be doing medical school. But because he's
Mm.
IT, I'm doing IT at USF, which is the University of South Florida." So I said, "Well, is it what you want to do?" He's like, "Yeah, it's
Mhm.
okay. I don't mind it." He goes, "But I'm Indian, so we do what our dads tell us." So
Wow.
cultural differences, I think, play a
Yeah.
big part in
Yeah.
young people. This is culturally, we do have different ideas and beliefs within
Hmm.
our own culture. And then we
Yeah.
have the societal norms and culture, things that kids are trying to live up to.
Right.
Do you see a lot of that in Canada where, and I don't know what your population is up there. I don't know if it's as diverse as here in the States. I'm sure it is. I've never been to
It
Canada, so I don't
is
know.
very
Um,
diverse.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to assume. I've just
Yeah.
never been that far north. What do you see culturally? Are there differences with the behaviors or expectations from parents in different cultures?
100%. I just had Vicky Wu on my podcast, and
I know
she is
she's
Chinese. She's amazing.
yeah,
And
she actually
she's
bought my book, and it's
right.
shipped to Australia. Yeah, she bought my book, and so my book is in Sydney, Australia now through her. So she
Nice.
and we connected. I saw she was on your show, and I thought,
She's
wow,
amazing.
small world. What a great thing the internet is when it's used properly.
Yeah,
So,
I love that her mission is to break cultural barriers, right?
mhm,
Because in certain cultures, parents grew up following the path that was laid before them, right? From their grandparents or parents. And they never followed what was their passion and what they wanted. And she was one of those kinds of moms. And she explained how um, she was having some issues with her children, like as far as rebellion, right?
mm,
Or like just not open to telling her things, right? Why? Because you're directing your kids. And so she realized, she was like, I don't want this. I don't want to not have a relationship with my kids. So she learned that she has to listen to them. And they did, she told me that her daughter actually did change careers
mm,
once she started listening, once her mom started listening and saying, okay, yeah. So I don't know, like my personal belief is that we're all born with gifts, and our job on the planet is to use our gifts. And if we have a preconceived idea of what our children should be doing with their lives, then we're not really fostering their gifts. And also because like I know I counsel young people all the time. I go against the parents'
uh-oh.
opinions, but I say your parents lived their life. This is your life. What do you want? Right? This is how I talk to them because what ends up happening, and actually my oldest son has a friend who followed the parents, he's Asian, followed
Okay.
his parents' wish to do a career. I think it was inspection, like food inspection. And then he ended up hating the career, like hating it. And so then he had to change paths again. So we're actually delaying our kids when we're pushing them into a career that they don't like. If they don't like it, they're not going to be good at it.
Right.
They're not they're not going to be the best doctor if it's not really what they want to do, right? So
Yeah.
that's why we have to listen to them. We have to listen to what they want to do because they know they're learning what their gifts are, right? And we can notice their gifts too and say you're really great at art or whatever it is, and encourage that. But we can't have all our children fitting a mold. That's not
Well,
healthy.
and that's something too that when I've been working with young people, it's the same thing. And I like you, I said that I believe that we have a gift or a talent of some kind at birth. I mean, even before we're born,
Yes.
something's already. It may take you years to discover it or figure it out,
Yeah.
but we have to have that discovery time, and to
Yeah.
not have that, I think is really detrimental. And the
Yeah.
thing that I found out with the kids that have been school shooters is, like you said earlier, there was a lot of trauma, a lot of family upheaval, a lot of struggle,
Mhm.
and these kids get tossed from foster care to family member to grandparent to, they're one of the parents might be in jail or missing altogether, like absent altogether. So there's no time for them to actually discover who they are because they're in survival mode all the time.
Yeah.
Do you
And I
see?
also,
Go ahead.
yeah, I feel like the adults in their lives failed them,
Mm,
right? Because our children need us, and they don't need everybody. They don't need uh, both parents. They don't need both grandparents. They just need one healthy person in their lives that is consistent.
mm,
And that is going to make the difference on how they turn out, what they do. It is a lack of connection and emotional needs not being met that will lead our teens to do things that are not good for society or for themselves, right?
yeah,
That's when they turn to self-destructive behavior or suicide or all of those things. The adults didn't pick up the signs and they didn't connect enough with them, right? Didn't talk about it,
right.
pushed it under the rug, right?
Avoidance.
Didn't yes, totally avoided it. Oh, he'll be okay. But our
God,
kids are
I hate hearing
communicating
that.
to us. Kids are communicating with us all the time.
Yeah.
And it is our job to read the signals, right? Because if our kids feel safe with us, they will tell us their deepest things. But if they don't feel safe, or you're too busy, or you're not connected, then they're not going to go to you. They're going to go to their peers, and maybe their peers are not the greatest,
Or the internet. They're going to find people on the
or
internet
the
that
internet.
you really
Yeah,
don't want them to be talking to,
yeah,
which there's evidence of that all over the place. And
yeah,
how these apps, I'm not going to name any so I don't get sued, but a lot of these apps now are in front of Congress because they are designed to promote a lot of this stuff. And I've
yeah.
seen it on, we have what's called C-SPAN here. It's the government channel. And basically, these top app, social media people, the names, they're in front of Congress, and Congress is saying, if you knew that your app was showing and or promoting self-harm, suicide, all these bad things for, 13-year-old girls, why were you allowing it to happen? And they
Yes,
couldn't answer.
yeah,
You know, again, I don't want to get sued, don't mention names, but you know,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
so how then, if this is a big parenting issue from what I'm hearing from you, and I believe that with my
Yeah.
stuff with parenting leadership,
Yes.
how do we start a, I don't want to say movement or revolution, but how do we change the mindset of parents from 25-year-old parents to 55-year-old parents that, they're, I've been trying to do this for 11 years, so I'm asking because I'm trying to figure it out. They're setting the example. They are the one that their child's looking to. They are the one that the child wants to go to.
Right.
why then are parents not understanding their role in all of this? I don't understand where the disconnect is. Is it ego? Is it fear? Is it lack of knowledge? Is it lack of care? Is it just, I hate hearing this. You're 18 now, you're on your own.
Right.
How many 18-year-olds in today's world are financially prepared, emotionally prepared,
Yeah.
academically prepared to go on, career wise?
Yeah.
Nothing. They're nothing. So at 18, you're going to throw them out.
Yeah.
What I have found is a lot of the parents that are in this struggle mode or this how do I use the right word here without sounding mean? The parents that just don't seem to have it, they don't understand. They're the ones that want to throw their kid out at 18.
Right.
Then there's the other side. I don't know if you've heard of this before. There's what's called the emerging adult idea. Have you heard of that? The emerging
No.
adult? There's a thing going around where if your child is 28, 29, or 30 years old, they're now considered an emerging adult. And if
Mm-hmm.
they have trouble at home or having trouble in the workplace, the parents are supposed to now, after 30 years, teach them how to be an adult.
Mm-hmm.
So at what point, and I say very early with the development, but in your view, when should parents start to develop their kids age appropriately, stage by stage, to prepare them for the adult world? Why do we wait so long here in the States and we wait way too long? In Canada, when do you guys start teaching life skills and job skills and how to interview for a job and how to shake a hand? Is there an age up there that you really start that, or is it like here in the States where it's just kind of
Yeah, it's in our
forgotten?
curriculum. Yeah, it's in our curriculum. We have a career life grade 10. So you
Okay.
learn resume, you learn how to do an interview, you actually research jobs,
Mm,
potential jobs. I do career ed 9. That's what I'll be doing this year. So we're going to explore interests, things like that. I get them thinking about what are your passions? What are your dreams?
I love it.
Um, yeah. And then grade 8, they also have career ed as well. It's not a full course, it's a part-time course because us counselors do it, the 8 and 9 level. But the grade 10 is actually a teacher and they have credits for that course. And then grade 12, they have another career course, Career Connections, where they have to produce a portfolio, right? They have
Okay.
to, yeah, they do a passion project. And it could be, and they could get help from a teacher. So let's say uh, there's a student that really wants to become a mechanic. And so we have an auto shop. So he could do a project that's related to that, and then he does a presentation on it. So that is a big deal in grade 12. They all have to complete that for their graduation. So I think we're there, we're getting there. But as far as real life skills, we still need to teach like budgeting, you
Hmm.
know, what do you do with your money? How do you invest? Like these are things that I think are so important for young people to learn. And also uh, how to finance your education. Do you want to be in debt after 4 years of university and still not have a job? This is
Yeah.
a problem that we're having here
Yeah.
because education is so expensive that kids are going to university, they're doing the traditional route of going to university, but then they end up not getting a job and working at Starbucks or something, right? And so that's the other thing. They need to be educated on that because you don't want a $40,000 debt when you are a young person,
Right.
right? So yeah, those things all should be addressed. I try to do that with my students. But going back to what you said, I think everyone has a role. Like I always say, it's our kids, right? The world's kids are all of our children because they're the future.
Hmm.
And so if parents are struggling, and I understand struggle and I understand just survival, right? I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to pay the bills, right? It's huge worry. So then they don't have the capacity to be a leader in their homes, right?
Right.
But here's the thing, the school system plays a huge role in helping parents because we see the kids. We see the kids more than the parents see the kids.
True.
So we will notice things, right? We will notice uh Johnny is getting mad, he's having a temper tantrum, or somebody is vaping in the washroom or whatever. We'll notice and we'll know things. And then it's up to us to intervene in that young person's life. And in a lot of cases, bring the parents in so we can have a dialogue on how we can change things with their kid, right? I think that is so crucial that more schools take responsibility for helping our parents that are struggling with that.
I think again, I can't speak on Canada, but I know that here a lot of our teachers take that on personally, and I don't
Mhm.
know specific programs in our school system for that, but I know that on November 2nd, I'm going to be doing a program at our local library system where the library system has, it's called Back to Basics. And I'm going to be doing workforce skills with parents and teens that Saturday, November 2nd. And they do a cooking class. They do like you were saying
Nice.
earlier about, the budget, different things. So the library system, we actually have a family and teen librarian. I had no idea that was even a thing. So I just happened to go down there and start talking about finding a space for me to do some things. They said, "Hey, we've got this whole program." So it just kind of worked out. But that's something our library is doing, not the school system, not the, it's a whole different kind of thing. So there are some resources, but again, if people don't know that the resources are there, then they're
Mhm.
not going to be able to utilize them. So I think that's one of
Right.
the problems. The other problem is overcoming the stigma of asking for help. I think a lot of
Yes.
parents, again, especially dads, I think
Yes.
dads are really afraid to ask for help because they see it as weakness. They see it
Yes.
as they're going to be judged, probably
Right.
because in their own childhood they were judged for whatever. And so it's just one of the things you want to avoid. So breaking
Or
this,
you,
go ahead.
they had the message as a child that we don't tell people about our problems.
Right. That's what I was. Yeah. So it's in the back of their mind that we just, you suck it up and you deal with it, and you
Yes.
handle it.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, in today's world, we are not able to just handle everything. We are in a
Yes.
24/7 digital age, bombarded by information, bombarded by opinions and thoughts and all these different things. And I think it not only affects our kids, the internet, but also parents, because we hear all the time there's a different type of parenting style, or there's a different type of parenting
Yeah.
solution, or there's a different type of parenting issue. And now with
Right.
the school shooters, with the parents in Michigan and Georgia, they're going to prison because of what happened
Wow.
with their kid. And like I said last week, I'm not condoning school shooting at all. Like, don't misconstrue, but if a parent knows that their child has issues and they are not doing something about it, and that child goes out and kills people,
Right.
what other recourse does society have but to go after the parent?
Yeah.
I'm hoping that if anything good comes out of those two cases in Michigan and Georgia, where the parents are going to prison, I'm hoping that other parents will begin to look at the issues and talk to counselors like yourself, or
Hmm.
listen to podcasts like mine and yours, or just ask for help through their
Yeah.
church, through the school, through
Yeah.
maybe even the legal system, social services, perhaps. I know there are a lot of resources here, but again, a lot of it's court ordered.
Right.
So the other stigma that we have is if it's court order, they're being told to do something, and right
Yes.
away, guys that have this issue of listening, or have this stigma upon them, being told by someone they don't know that they have to do something in their court
Right.
ordered, their initial instinct is to fight it.
Right.
So I think
Yeah.
those are some things that we need to really overcome for our kids' sake and our society as a whole, because it does come back to the home, which you said yesterday.
Yeah.
It comes back to the parents and their
Yeah.
willingness to see the facts, deal with it, ask for help, and talk to their kids. I mean, you said this the other day too. It was so important. The communication, the lack of communication
Yeah.
real listening
Yeah.
is something I think is just a lost art when it comes to parents and their kids. And as a result, we are seeing kids turning to drugs, turning to the wrong people, turning to poor behaviors or poor relationships. You know, a lot of
Hmm.
times these kids get into these horrible relationships. Do you have any in your line of work, do you have any tips that you could give a parent that's having a situation like this? What are some basic things you could tell them to do or offer them?
Yeah, the first thing is we are always role modeling with our kids, right? So we have to be the models, right? Of what we want our kids to be. So we want them to get exercise. We got to exercise. We want them to be social. We got to socialize,
Hmm.
right? We want them to learn certain skills. Then we need to learn those skills too, and then teach it to them. So we're the models, the first thing, right? And also how we handle conflict. If we
Very important.
yell, yeah, if we yell and scream and slam the door, that's what we're modeling to our children, right? That's what they're learning. So the first thing is we are the role models. So we have to always be demonstrating like healthy behavior, right? And I think I mentioned to you yesterday, like
Mhm.
there's three components to a healthy relationship, and we have to model those. And that is that our children feel seen. That means they're never ignored. I'm sorry, parents, but ignoring our kids is unhealthy. Okay, so if they're whining and complaining and you're ignoring them, that actually is unhealthy for them. They need something from you at that moment. They need support. They need care, right? Because they're struggling.
Mhm.
So, feel seen, to feel heard, that means that their voice matters, their opinion matters, that they feel safe enough to express themselves. Well, even if it's anger, like you can't be uncomfortable with their emotions. They need to be able to express their emotions. If they're really frustrated, they might throw something. That's okay. Just don't hurt anybody and don't break anything, right? But yeah, it's okay for you. I know you gotta give the rules that way, right? Like you don't hit your sibling, you don't break the TV, but you can express your anger. That's okay, right? So we give them that message that their voice matters and their opinion matters and they can speak freely without
Right.
judgment. And then the last one is to be supported. So, Chris, you said that you were supported by your stepmom and your dad
Yeah.
in your career aspirations, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we need to do. We need to support our kids with whatever ideas they have, right? Like that is so crucial. My oldest was really interested in languages. When he was in grade 7, he asked me uh, if we could get subscribed to this language website. I said, sure, no problem. He was in his room a lot, like for 3 years. And then 3 years later, he can speak Russian fluently and read it, right?
Wow.
So that was his passion, and I supported it, right? I gave him the tool. I'm like, okay, go ahead. So that's what we do. We support our kids when they tell us things they want to try. We don't discourage it, right? Um, those three things are super, super important. So be the model, have healthy relationships with those three things that you're giving your child, that they're feeling seen, heard, and supported. And then when you're struggling with your child, then you have to stop, like slow everything down so you don't overreact and you don't have all of these crazy thoughts, right? Because when we come from childhood pain, we have all these crazy thoughts like, oh, they're being mean to me, or um, they will never amount to anything, or like we're very fatalistic, right?
Right.
When it comes to our childhood pain, because that's what we grew up with, right?
Yeah.
But
That's what I felt when my son was in third grade. I instantly went back to I was embarrassed that it happened
yeah,
because as a dad in his 40s at the time, I should not have felt like an 8, 9-year old kid.
no,
But it went back in a split second, and I
yeah,
just couldn't believe that I talked to him like I did. I felt terrible, and but again, that just goes to show that if someone does have that pent up
Yes.
insecurity or that lack of closure from when
Yeah.
you're a kid, uh, it's going to carry over and it's going to keep compounding. It's just going to get bigger and
Yes.
bigger.
Yeah.
And this is something that we have to address as a society, as individuals, as fathers,
Yeah.
mothers, grandparents, even.
Yes.
Grandparents are supporting a
I know.
lot of children today. And
I know. I
so
know.
now we have generational differences. And we talked
Yes.
about that last week. And so all of these things, I know we're getting close to our time here. I'm trying to see, I
Yeah.
don't want to keep you too
Yeah.
long. But
That's
all
okay.
of these things are what I think is just leading up to these tragedies that we see in the schools,
Yeah.
whether it's a school shooter or even just the attempted suicide or the lack of the broken relationship between
Yeah.
parents and teens. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a crisis as a school shooting to be
Yeah.
detrimental to a family.
Yes.
And I think these are things that we have to look at and change our society. We have all these
Yes.
great things at our fingertips. The ability to talk to you in Florida and Canada and do this is great technology, but at the same time, technology can be used in so many harmful ways. That's something
Yes.
we have to address. There's so much to go on. So I want to
Yeah.
thank you so much. I know our time is up. I know I promised you an hour, so that's what I
No
want to do. I don't want
problem.
to.
No
It's Sunday.
problem.
I don't want to mess up your Sunday.
Yeah. That's
But
okay.
before we go, tell everybody again how they can find you and
Okay.
all the great things that you're doing.
Okay. Great. 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 Okay. So, I am part of the School of Humankind. They are on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I am going to be doing four webinars with them. Two in October and two in November. And you can sign up on the School of Humankind website for my events. There's various topics. So we'll talk about this childhood pain. We'll talk about how to connect with your kids, those kinds of things. The things that are like super important. How do you get your kids to comply without punishing them, right? So I'm happy to help parents. That those webinars are free. I am on LinkedIn. I'm on YouTube, Masterful Parenting, so you can catch the shows there as well. I have a show with Win Win Women in Utah, but that's aired also on Rayco and Apple TV and things like that. So you can find me. I'm actually all over the place, so you're not going to have a hard time finding me. AnneAlvares.com is my website, and yeah, reach out. I love helping parents.
Fantastic. That's awesome. And I just forgot, I have a brand new website just came out a few weeks ago. It was Christopher S. Mahan, Mahan, empowers.com. I know it's long. I was told it's way too long, but it's Christopher S. Mahan, empowers.com. Brand new website. I'd love for you guys to check that out.
Yeah.
So, uh, Miss Ann, I always call you Annie. I'm sorry,
Ah,
but Miss
yes.
Ann, I'm gonna wrap this one up. Thank you so much, and I definitely want to have you back on again, whether it's on this or my other podcast, Lead Your Teen,
Yeah.
because your information's great and you're you know charismatic. It's just kind of infectious. So people have to
Thank you.
listen to you. It's very nice. So you
Oh, thanks, Chris.
have a great rest of your day. And for everyone watching, please reach out to us every Sunday for the next 4 more weeks. We have this show, Shadows on the Wall, The Psychology of School Shooter. It's on YouTube. Please tell your friends, your family, share this. If you have any questions or comments for this show or me or Miss Ann, please reach out to me at leadyourteen@gmail.com. I'll reach out to her if you have anything for her and ship it. Or do you have a contact directly? Is that off your website? Can they contact you?
Yeah,
Okay. So you
for
can just
sure.
contact her directly. But mine is leadyourteen@gmail.com. And Lead Your Teen podcast on Spotify every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Thank you guys very much. And I welcome your comments and your questions. You guys have a great week. All right. There we go. All right. You still there?
I am. Did you stop the
Okay.
recording?
Yep, I did. It's done.
It didn't
Okay.
say stop recording.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It
I hope
still says recording.
Uh-oh. Well, I'll have to edit that out, won't I?